welcome back to Pia Talks. We are back with more paranormal. We are talking Believers, Season 1, Episode 4. In our first story, we're following Officer Stephen Jacobs. Stephen lives in Springfield, Minnesota, and this takes place in January of 2012. Stephen gets a phone call from his friend Linda, who is a single mom, and she is completely freaked out. She's telling him that ever since she moved into her new house, she has seen some very odd things. Drops of blood that have been sprinkled throughout the house. She says that she thought that maybe someone had snuck into her house and was playing some kind of prank on her, but it's starting to scare her quite a bit. So Stephen goes over to check things out to see if there's anything that he can do to help. She took a little video of what she thought was blood drops throughout her house after she checked to verify that her son was not bleeding at all and neither was her cat. So this really freaks her out because there's no reason for these droplets throughout the house.
Yeah, it looked like drops of blood, but my gut told me it wasn't a break-in.
Stephen comes over, he goes through the entire house and he can't find anything. Linda tells him that her son has been really quiet and has been spending a lot of his time in his room, and she says he's just way more quiet than usual. Stephen tells her that he doesn't have a lot of experience with children, but he would be happy to help. If she didn't mind, he would like to go have a little talk with her son Andrew. When Stephen goes into Andrew's room to have a conversation with him, he sees Andrew drawing a picture. Stephen says, "Oh, is that a picture of you and your mom?" He says, "No, it's me and Jade. She lives here." Stephen thought, "Oh, wow. Well, he's 10 years old. He has an imaginary friend named Jade. Okay." Then out of nowhere, Andrew says, "No, she's more like a ghost." Right off the bat, Linda, come in here, girl. You don't know. Okay, Stephen was much more relaxed and a lot calmer than I would ever be. Stephen was so relaxed, he said, "Well, do you know why the ghost is here? Why does she live here?" And he says, "Oh yeah, she was murdered here." No, ma'am. No, sir. She's finding blood droplets throughout the house. Now Andrew is saying there's a woman named Jade who lives here who was murdered here. So I'm assuming those are her blood drops. We've got to go. That's all I'm saying. It's time to move. Stephen says that he was quite shook at the moment. He didn't know what to say. Andrew says, "Would you like to know where she was murdered?" He takes Stephen to the actual spot where she was murdered, and he told Stephen that Jade had been beat to death. Stephen said that he didn't know what to do. He said he was just staring at Andrew thinking, "Oh my gosh, this poor kid." He said, "I don't know what's going on with him, but he believes this whole thing." Stephen tells Linda that her son believes that there was a woman who was murdered there in their house. Linda comes back and tells Steve, she says, "Well, yeah, there was someone murdered here. I found out after I moved into the house." She says that one of the neighbors told her about the murder, but her son would have never known that. Oh gosh. She tells him that the previous owner murdered her and the girl's name was Jade Davidson. Stephen said he was like, "Oh boy, oh gosh." Stephen decides that he's going to do a little digging into the case and see if he can confirm that this really happened and that it was on their property and what the victim's name really was. He actually finds out that all facts are true. The woman's name was Jade Davidson, and she was murdered there on the property. She was beaten violently. Stephen says that he went ahead and tracked down the arresting officer because he wanted to know some more information regarding this particular case. He found out that she was beaten to death with a baseball bat and that the case had not gone to trial yet and that the actual suspect was in jail. Linda calls Stephen and she is extremely upset. She tells him that her son is apparently now talking to the ghost. And it's not Jade, it's somebody else. A totally different ghost there at the house. See, I don't understand why they still live there. There is no freaking way that I would not have moved out. No way am I still living there. She says, however, whoever this new ghost is, they are not friendly like Jade is to her son, and she is getting scared and that her son is also scared. Stephen shows up to have another talk with Andrew, and Andrew is clearly scared and freaked out. He tells him that the night before, he's in his bed and he hears strange music coming on, and all of a sudden he starts hearing these muffled voices whispering, and whoever this ghost is whispering to him is telling him that he needs to kill the family pets. He says that he doesn't want to kill his family pet, and he would never kill his family pet, and he draws a picture of the man. 3 days later, Stephen said that he was still thinking about Linda and Andrew, so he decided to stop by and check on Andrew to see how he was doing. When Stephen gets there, Linda tells him that she had just found 2 of their cats in the garage and their necks had been broken. There is no way that I would still be living there. I am sorry, but hell no. We have got to go. Stephen goes to ask Andrew about it, and after they have this conversation, Stephen absolutely 100% believes that Andrew had nothing to do with the deaths of these cats. Stephen says that throughout his entire career, he has seen all kinds of liars in his line of work, and he knows that that little boy is not lying to him. He had nothing to do with those cats. So Stephen decides that he needs more information, so he decides to go over to the jail and meet up with the suspect in Jade's murder.
It was the victim's boyfriend, Marcus Flint.
I watched them draw pentagrams on the walls. Light candles and fill jars with water and pennies float. They begin to spin by themselves. Like there was some kind of force. Nobody believes me.
He says that Jade would have friends over and they would do all these seances, and that's the thing. What have I said over and over and over again? We don't do the seance. There is no need to have a seance. Nothing ever good happens when you have a seance. It's just not all right, people. Anyway, he said they would have these seances and contact these spirits. And he believes that they have opened up something terrible in that house. And I believe so as well. That's why you don't do it. He says that they had pennies in a jar, and when they would have these seances, the pennies would float around in the jar. He said one night when they had one of those seances, weird things started to happen. He started to hear strange music, and then he started to hear strange voices. He said finally one of the voices started saying his name and talking to him and telling him that he should kill Jade. According to Marcus, one of these evenings he actually blacked out, and when he came to, Jade was dead. And Stephen said Marcus had that same look in his eye that Andrew had, and he believes that Marcus was actually in some sort of trance and he killed Jade. Stephen said no matter how crazy it sounded, he knew that Marcus believed that and Andrew believes that, and something is definitely happening there. Stephen then gets a call from Linda, and she tells him that Andrew just told her that the spirit/ghost is now telling him to kill her. The ghost wants him to kill his mom. Turns out when Stephen gets there, he finds out that that same jar with the pennies in it that Marcus was telling him that Jade and her friends used to use in the rituals, Andrew had actually found that jar. He didn't know what to do, so he called somebody to ask for some help. He called his spiritual advisor, who told him he had to get that jar out of the house, and as soon as he picked up the jar, the pennies started spinning in the jar. Oh God. Stephen says that the person told him that he needed to bury the jar back in the same place that Andrew found it and then put salt all around the hole where he was burying it. While he was outside burying the jar and spreading the salt, Andrew was right about to attack his mom. As soon as he buried the jar and spread the salt around, Andrew wakes up out of this trance and drops the knife to the floor. Linda and Andrew still live in the house. They said that it's a very peaceful house, and Andrew says that Jade is still around, but she doesn't hurt him at all, and the evil spirit is gone. Yikes. I still would have moved. I mean, what's gonna happen the next time somebody decides to dig up that yard and get that jar out? I would move. The next story follows a guy named Brian and his wife Kelly Murphy, and they live in Alberta, Canada, and this takes place in 2010. Brian has this new job, so that's why him and Kelly has moved to Alberta, and they have a brand new baby. He says everything is absolutely great. They're living in their new house. The first few weeks, he says things are really good. Then out of nowhere, things start to get a little weird, and his wife starts waking up in the middle of the night hearing strange noises and voices. The voices were saying to her, "Katie is ours." And she thought, what? I'd have just left. You starting off wrong with me in the first place. We just moved in here and now you try to take my baby? Time to go. After a while, she not only heard the voices, she started seeing what she calls shadow people. Brian never saw anything, so he thought that she was just overreacting. She was tired. She's a new mom. She's not getting enough rest. Don't they always say that? Oh, there's a reason for it. Yeah, it is. It's just not the reason that you want to believe and accept. She was telling him that she's really afraid of the house, and the scariest place for her is going into the basement, and she's home alone with the baby when he's at work. So she's down in the basement, and out of nowhere the lights go out. And then she realizes there's some kind of symbol on the floor in the basement. Then she starts to hear the voices again, and it really freaks her out. She tells Brian about it, and he still doesn't think that there's anything wrong. He doesn't believe that anything is happening. He thinks it's just a lack of sleep. You know what? I was kind of ticked at Brian because I'm thinking, she's telling you that she's hearing voices. She's also, there's a symbol downstairs on the floor. Like, I felt that he should be saying to himself, how fast can I get my family out of here? 4 days later, Brian comes home after working a 14-hour shift. Kelly is absolutely frantic, and she's waiting for him to get home. When he gets home, the only thing she wants to do is show him.
And then I saw the marks. Long, bloody cuts. Like some sort of animal had clawed her.
They look like some sort of animal just clawed her back. Now is she just not sleeping? Now is she just overreacting? Brian said he didn't know what to do, he didn't know what to think, but it didn't matter because Kelly had decided she had had enough. So she had contacted 2 paranormal investigators that she found in the area. She was done with it. Personally, that would not have been my first call. My first call would have been to Pastor Anderson. My second call would have been to the realtor. And the third call would have been to the U-Haul place. Okay, we are out of here. Out. Me and my baby have to be saved. That's just too much. 2 days later, the paranormal investigators, David and Sarah, show up. They set up all their cameras. They let them know that these infrared sensors can pick up a lot more than the human eye can see. So we will just go ahead and set all this equipment up. While they're in there checking out all the equipment, looking at the cameras, all of a sudden they hear their baby screaming at the top of her lungs. Kelly and Sarah run up the steps to go check on the baby. While they're running up the steps, Brian and David are actually watching the cameras.
They refer to it as energy. When they got to the baby's room, whatever was causing the static on the screen just stopped.
And Kelly asked Sarah, what is going on? What is happening in this house? Brian says it was then that he realized that something was really going on in that house. And I'm thinking, them animal claw scratches on the back, that wasn't enough? I mean, seriously. Sarah tells Kelly that there is definitely something in her house, and Sarah is also psychic. Sarah actually starts talking to whatever it is in the house, and she starts to follow the whatever it is through the house, and she goes down into the basement, which is, honey, I wouldn't have never went. Brian says that he's watching the monitors and he's watching Sarah talking and making her way through the house when out of nowhere his cell phone chirps and states that he has 2 voicemails. However, his cell phone had never rang. They get these voicemails.
The noises sounded evil.
Sarah tells them that the spirits in their house are the spirits of 2 bad men who used to dabble in black magic, and it was all done there in Brian and Kelly's house, and that these men are preying upon Kelly and her baby. So Sarah goes downstairs in the basement and performs some sort of ritual, and whatever ritual it is that she did, she tells Kelly and Brian that the bad men, the bad spirits, the bad entities are gone from their house. But Brian said he doesn't play that. He packed up his family and moved across the country. He said there will be other jobs. He could not leave his wife and his daughter unprotected that way. And I say, all right, Brian, because that's what I would have done as well. He also says that he contacted the cell phone company and they told him that he had 0 calls during that time frame. No calls. So he said he knows that was paranormal. I'm just happy that they were all got away safe, and I am happy that he moved his wife out of there. The next story takes place in Colorado Springs, Colorado in March of 2009, and we are following Michael and Jason. They had just moved to Colorado from a small town. They were super excited about moving to the big city, as he says, and they rented a beautiful apartment overlooking a gorgeous park. And on their first night there, they decided they did not want to cook because they had all this unpacking and everything else to do. So they decided to take a walk through the park and go to a Thai restaurant. On the way back from the restaurant, they decided to swing back through the park as well and just sit in the park and enjoy the view. He says that everything went well until all of a sudden a light just pops off. And it gets extremely dark in the park. And he said it wasn't like when the light burns out, it was a pop. So he said that he started feeling a little weird. However, he says that his husband, Jason, is really sensitive and had told him previously that sometimes he senses and sees things. And he says, so they're just standing there and Jason says, "Do you hear that?" And he's like, "Hear what?" He didn't hear anything. And Jason said, "You don't hear the voices?" And he's like, "What voices?" He's looking all over the place trying to figure out what voices, what are you talking about? And he says it's only a few minutes past when all of a sudden he's hearing voices. And the voices are getting louder and louder. And he says the next thing you know, they are surrounded by shadow people.
These shadowy figures seem to be moving all around us.
We'll hold short, 30.
And we heard these whispers,
5.
Starting on down.
but they were somehow deafening.
I tell you what, I don't think that my knees are set up for the run, but I would have ran. He said that they froze. He said Jason was frozen like he was in some sort of trance. Michael said that he did finally have some kind of sense that came to his mind that he should take pictures. So he pulls out his cell phone and he starts snapping pictures. And all of a sudden, he says, Jason gets out of the trance he was in and he says, "Let's go." And they took off running. Anyway, they run back to their apartment and Michael says that they sat there for quite some time trying to figure out, what did we just see? What just happened to us? And then finally he remembered, I took pictures there. So he puts the pictures up on his computer And he realizes that it was too dark to catch the shadow figures, but he caught all these orbs of light. And he thought, this is crazy. And somebody else has had to experience this. So he actually did some searching, some digging online. And he came across a post of another person who had that same experience at the park. And the person put a link in the post. The link was to a news article. And on March 3rd, 1991, United Flight 585 from Denver to Colorado Springs Municipal Airport, Boeing 737 crashed into Wakefield Park and exploded on impact 4 miles away from the runway, with 20 passengers and 5 crew members were lost. Michael says that as soon as he read the article, he decided that he was going to go and tell Jason about it. As he walks into the room, Jason's in bed asleep and he's hearing voices. But when he looks around, there is a shadow man standing at the end of his bed. And when he flips on the light and starts screaming, "Go away," the shadow person turns translucent and disappears. Honey, y'all done moved from the park to our park, but it's time for us to go. He said that him and Jason moved by the end of the summer, and he said he never felt right living there, and they left and have never looked back. I tell you what, no ma'am. Same here. Let's leave and don't come back. I would never go back there. Not to the park, not to the apartment, not down the street. That is a lot. Ooh, that was a creepy one, right? Anyway, until next time.